The story opens in the O household where the eldest sister, In-ju, and middle sister In-kyung are planning to give their youngest sibling, In-hai, a birthday surprise. The eldest sister grew up in a terribly poor environment and realizes that money was the most important thing to protect herself and her family. Their sister arrives when the two older sisters surprise her with a cake. Shortly after, their mother, Hee-yeon, also arrives and the four women sit to eat. The two elder sisters give In-hai 2.5 million won for a high school trip to Europe. However, their mother snatches the money away, claiming that the sisters did not give her any when she wanted to visit their father in the Philippines. In-ju lists the debts their father had left for them to pay, but their mother is still not happy about it. In-kyung, who works as a reporter, argues that In-hai got into the best art school in the country by her merit with a scholarship and deserves. The oldest sister then takes the money back from mom. The next morning, In-ju and In-kyung wake up with a note from their mother, who has fled with the money, leaving a narcissistic note behind. She claims that she's going to live her life from now on and leaves with In-hai's gift. In-ju is pissed and sadly tells In-hai about their mother's betrayal. In-ju starts crying out of anger, but In-kyung pledges to send In-hai off on the trip. In-hai asks her sisters to not worry about it as she never thought she'd be able to go anyway. The next day, In-ju, who works as an accountant, talks to her team leader asking for an advance salary, but she gives her an earful over it. In-ju is an outcast at work because she is poor. She hangs out with another outcast colleague, Hwa-young, who offers to pay her the sum she needs. At Oba news station, In-kyung gets reprimanded for crying while reporting the news on live television. Her colleague tells her that In-kyung is over-empathetic, which is a problem in their line of work. She tells In-kyung that she should find something that drives her and work on those kinds of news reports. Later, In-kyung contemplates applying for a personal loan to fund the Europe trip when her great-aunt, Hae-suk, calls her. The old woman tells her that upon their mother's instruction, she will be taking care of the girls. However, In-kyung is pissed when Hae-suk offers to lend her money. The next day, In-ju and Hwa-young go out to an expensive restaurant. While having dinner, the latter transfers the money that In-ju needs. She also asks In-ju to sign some bank documents. In-ju does so without reading them since they are in English. At work, In-kyung pushes herself to visit her great-aunt Hae-suk and takes a sip of the drink from her mouthwash before entering the house. The great-aunt badmouths In-kyung's mother for abandoning them, which triggers her. Hae-suk tells In-kyung that she will lend her the 1.25 million won in exchange, but In-kyung will have to read the newspaper to Hae-suk every day for a month. On her way out, In-kyung runs into Jong-ho, Hae-suk's neighbor's son. They catch up, and he reveals he had returned to Korea a few days ago. He offers to treat her to a meal and reveals that Hae-suk had specifically asked him to deliver her package at this time. That night, In-ju surprises In-hai with the 2.5 million won, but the younger of the two does not accept the money. In-hai leaves in rage, but In-ju, who followed her sister, notices the young girl getting into a car. In-ju follows her and waits for In-hai to leave the large bungalow that she went into. Elsewhere, In-kyung is at work where the team is discussing the candidate, Park Yi-sang, a rookie politician who is running for mayor of Seoul. While the rest of the team approves of the politician, In-kyung is keen on investigating a heinous crime around the candidate which involves the sudden deaths of many individuals. In-kyung explains the Bobi Savings Bank case that Yi-sang defended as an attorney a few years ago. Outside the large house, In-ju notices the woman from inside the house giving In-hai an envelope with money. Just as In-hai is about to leave with it, In-ju intervenes to inquire. She learns that In-hai made a painting of the rich woman's daughter, and the money was compensation for that. In-ju refuses to take the money and leaves with In-hai. On their drive back, In-ju tells In-hai that she doesn't want her to live the same life as them where she was sympathized with and treated like a beggar. At work, In-kyung investigates the Bobi Savings Bank case and finds out many loopholes in connection to candidate Park Yi-sang. Meanwhile, Hwa-young sends In-ju a document via email with secrets of the colleagues that had outcasted them. In-ju rests and waters the plants at Hwa-young's office, where she is met with Choi Do-il, who worked with Hwa-young on a project in Europe. He asks for In-ju's number, and she acts coy but gives it to him. That afternoon, she notices him meeting candidate Yi-sang outside their office. At the Aubin office, In-kyung breaks down the cases where Yi-sang was an attorney in the past that led to multiple suicides in connection to the Bobi Savings case. She explains that the 140 billion won compensation to the victims randomly went missing after their deaths. Her boss is proud of In Kyung and asks her to do her best with this case. Meanwhile, In-ju is at work where her mean colleagues are talking about Choi Do-il when he suddenly walks in looking for In-ju. Her colleagues are shocked to learn that he knows her. In Kyung attends a press conference with candidate Yi Sang and asks him questions about the suicides in front of other reporters. She is able to shock him into silence, but in the women's room, she seems worried. She uses a mouthwash bottle to drink out of and swallows the contents instead of spitting it out. As she is leaving, Yi Sang runs into her and asks about her interest in the Bobi Savings Bank case. In-ju and Do-il have lunch together, and he asks her to call HWA Young Meaning to learn her whereabouts. At In Kyung's office, her colleague exposes her to being dependent on alcohol and reveals a video where Yi Sang publicly insulted her for that. As it turns out, the mouthwash bottle was filled with tequila, bottles of which In Kyung keeps at her desk. In-ju arrives at HWA Young's place to feed the fish, but discovers HWA Young's dead body hanging in the closet. She is shocked and drinks at HWA Young's funeral all by herself. The mean colleagues from work arrive at HWA Young's funeral and pretend to cry over her death, whereas the news reporters claim that HWA Young had gotten plastic surgery on her face before she passed. After a few days, In-ju is at work and is tired of her colleagues bad-mouthing HWA Young after her death. She publicly exposes them using the secrets HWA Young shared with her and causes chaos in the workplace. Choi Do-il and HWA Young's boss, Shin Hyun-min, arrives to have a chat with In-ju. Hyun-min reveals that HWA Young stole 70 billion won from the office, and upon being investigated by him, she suddenly committed suicide. Hyun-min and Do-il ask In-ju to help them find the money HWA Young stole. Since the money was from an illegal slush fund, In-ju refuses and leaves. In-ju quits her job and gets a call from HWA Young's yoga class. They reveal that before her passing, HWA Young had transferred her membership to In-ju. Meanwhile, In Kyung is suspended from her job for 6 months as she is found guilty of using alcohol at work. At the yoga clinic, In-ju checks out HWA Young's locker and finds a large bag. She finds HWA Young's belongings and starts crying. However, a note from HWA Young reveals that the deceased colleague had left behind the 70 billion won she stole, and In-ju bursts into tears. That night, In-ju prepares dinner for herself and In Kyung. At the table, the younger of the two informs that she was suspended from her job for a month due to her alcoholic dependency. In-ju pledges to help her not turn into an alcoholic like their father, and they decide they need to throw away the summer radish kimchi their mother left behind. Meanwhile, In-hai paints her rich friend's portrait at her house. Back at the O family house, In-ju cleans the boxes of kimchi and replaces them with the cash she found at HWA Young's house, which totals up to 2 billion won. She sneaks 1 million into her purse and goes to a convenience store. Meanwhile, In-ju meets Hyun-min as she agrees to help them as per her terms and conditions. In Kyung reaches out to one of the victim's relatives from the Bobi Savings Bank case, but is not able to speak with him. Jong-ho invites her in for a meal, and she catches up with his grandfather who she hung out with as a child. Just then, she receives a call from the victim's nephew who makes her note down an address, asking to meet him at the fish market the following day. Meanwhile, Do-il and In-ju visit HWA Young's house to look for clues, but In-ju asks him to leave so that she can concentrate. She starts by making a tally of the items HWA Young purchased from the receipts she left behind and finds that she spent a lot on luxury goods despite claiming to be poor. In-ju recalls a conversation when HWA Young where the latter explained the perks of living a double life with a different identity outside of work. In-ju then goes through HWA Young's phone and finds a burner Instagram account. This, in turn, leads her to HWA Young's secret life. In-ju calculates HWA Young's total expenses and finds many gaps that she knows someone like HWA Young would not have. Elsewhere, Hyun-min arrives and lures In-ju into helping him find HWA Young by claiming that she could keep the luxury items the former accountant left behind. He gets too close to In-ju, making the latter cry in discomfort. He insinuates that the job she is tasked with is dangerous and requires her to be presentable, demanding she wear expensive heels. As he is getting close to In-ju, who is visibly in tears, he notices that HWA Young's house has an orchid that seems very fresh. Hyun-min leaves in shock for some reason. Early the next morning, In Kyung and Jong-ho drive to the fish market, but they spot a car accident on the way there. At the market, she tries calling the victim's nephew, but he doesn't answer the call. She senses something wrong and asks Jong-ho to drive her back to the accident scene. Near the car, she calls the man again and finds his phone ringing. Turns out he had died in the car accident. Jong-ho finds the same orchid as the one at Hwa Young's house. On the other hand, In-ju is at the shop that sells the same heels Hwa Young gave at the restaurant before she dies. She learns that it was Hyun-min who purchased it. She talks to her team leader, who is sure Hwa Young and Hyun-min were in a secret relationship which could be easily exposed using the ledgers. She adds that Hyun-min only seeks to have an affair with women that wear cheap heels, which shocks In-ju. In-ju thinks about the day and goes through Hwa Young's burner Instagram account when she has an epiphany. She rushes to meet Do-il, and they discuss the nature of Hwa Young's relationship with Hyun-min. In-ju informs him that it was Hyun-min who gifted the rare heels to Hwa Young, and they conclude that Hyun-min made her steal the money because of their affair. They assume that he killed her to make her the fall guy and keep the 70 billion won for himself. Do-il adds that Hyun-min is the person who handled the forensics for Hwa Young's murder. In-ju visits Hwa Young's building owner to inspect the CCTV footage from the night of her death, but it is somehow missing. Meanwhile, In-kyung and Jong-ho are with the cops looking at the dash cam footage of the victim's nephew, Cheol-seong's car from minutes before the accident. They notice that Cheol-seong lost balance of the car, but nothing out of the blue to prove In-kyung's hunch. In-kyung is back at home when she breaks down reading a text from the now-deceased Cheol-seong. Meanwhile, Do-il and In-ju go through Hwa Young's chats with Hyun-min and learn that it was Hwa Young who orchestrated the travel ban unbeknownst to Hyun-min. Due to this ban, he couldn't leave the country and unknowingly sent her to Switzerland to transfer the 70 billion won from the slush fund. They conclude that Hyun-min probably learnt about Hwa Young's betrayal of him after she returned to Korea and hounded her till she gave up and killed herself. In-ju and Do-il look up the woman who worked at Hwa Young's position before her and learn that she too had committed suicide. In-kyung attends the funeral of Cheol-seong and secretly hands a note over to his brother. In-ju and Do-il learn that the employee who worked at Hwa Young's position before her had also died with the same modus operandi, or mo, as Hwa Young. Hence, Do-il concludes that Hyun-min's mo was to involve poor women in embezzlement schemes and eventually coerce them into killing themselves. In-ju asks Do-il to report the crimes to the police, but he states that since the funds are illegal, they will become the property of the state. She wishes he would help solve Hwa Young's murder, but Do-il explains how he values money more than life. Elsewhere, In-kyung chats with Jong-ho about her being over-empathetic. She explains the Yi-sang case to Jong-ho, but he is having a hard time trusting her. That night, In-ju receives a package from Hyun-min, and they are branded red heels, leaving her shocked. The girl that In-hai was making a portrait for, Park Hyo-rin, uses In-hai's artwork as her own to win a grand prize where they call her a child prodigy. Park Hyo-rin is none other than candidate Park Yi-sang's daughter. In-kyung watches the same painting on a billboard on the street and recalls her younger sister painting it. At the same time, In-ju confronts Hyun-min about the murder of his past two employees and asks if she was his next target. Hyun-min swears that he is not responsible for the two deaths and claims that Hwa Young and he weren't seeing each other, but that she only took advantage of him. Hyun-min claims that he was willing to take responsibility for the embezzlement. On his way out, his car starts acting up, and he too meets with an unfortunate end in the same way as Cheol-seong did. A blue orchid inside his car can be seen, just before the car falls off the rooftop parking lot, killing Hyun-min as In-ju watches in a state of shock. After witnessing Hyun-min's death, In-ju is left deeply shaken. She drags Hyun-min's body out of the crashed car herself and calls the cops. Back at home, In-kyung confronts In-hai about her connection with Yi-sang's daughter, Hyo-rin. The younger of the two states that she gave away her painting to Hyo-rin because her mother promised to fund In-hai's education at the Boston Arts High School alongside Hyo-rin. In-kyung tells her sister that she is committing a crime, but In-hai states that her talent holds no value in comparison to Hyo-rin and her family name. The youngest sister wants to live a life of luxury, even if it means committing a crime. In-kyung learns that In-hai had skipped her class before it ended. Her friends tell In-kyung that In-hai was at Hyo-rin's house for a celebration. In-ju is trying to help Hyun-min by performing CPR on him when Do-il calls his phone. She tells him what happened just as the ambulance arrives. A shaken Inju notices the blue orchid that has fallen from Hyun Min's car. In Kyung is at Yi Sang's house where she is denied entry into the party. She lets Yi Sang and his security know that she is here to see In Hai. In Hai hides away as In Kyung barges into the party and creates a scene. She calls In Hai, but the younger sister does not answer. At the celebration, Hyo Rin's father Yi Sang talks to In Hai about her paintings. They reassure In Hai, saying they had big plans for her future, and she is glad about it. Meanwhile, Inju is in a state of shock when Do-il arrives at the hospital. She tells him what happened and how she confronted Hyun Min before the accident. Do-il reassures her, gives her an alibi to save her from being blamed for the accident, and breaks the news about Shin Hyun Min's death to her. Inju begins doubting Do-il and asks if he was aware of the accident beforehand. In Kyung is drunk now and climbs up a pole outside Park Yi Sang's house to make a scene and get In Hai out. The little sister is made uncomfortable by the comments from the guests, while In Kyung's colleague, who is at the party, records the incident. Yi Sang smiles wickedly, noticing In Kyung's outburst while his wife and Hyo Rin try to reassure a disappointed In Hai. The cops arrive, but Yi Sang asks her to be let go. Thus, In Kyung confronts Yi Sang, asking him his true intentions about helping In Hai, and leaves him with a stern warning. At the hospital, Do-il informs Inju about HWA Young's fraudulent activities and the fact that she withdrew 2 billion won in cash. Inju is tense when Do-il mentions that HWA Young may be working with an accomplice. Now that Hyun Min is dead, they want to pin the blame onto him, stating that he acquired the 70 billion won from HWA Young. He asks Inju to trust her as he has nothing to gain from her. Yi Sang and his wife are worried about Hyo Rin's future now that In Hai has turned out to be reporter In Kyung's sister. Yi Sang tells his wife that In Hai being In Kyung's sister is their leverage against the loudmouth reporter. That night, In Hai is really angry with In Kyung, and Inju worriedly washes the blood from her clothes. Inju recalls her day at work as she reads through HWA Young's letters and postcards in her office. She is able to find a link with CEO Won Sang-woo, who is in the psychiatric hospital. She takes the bag with the 2 billion won with a bloomed flower to meet Sang-woo as per HWA Young's request. In Kyung is being reprimanded at work for her actions. Before In Kyung's boss kicks her colleague, Ma Rai, out, In Kyung asks her why she was at the party at Park Yi Sang's house. In Kyung confronts Ma Rai for filming the video, and their boss asks her to leave. He talks to In Kyung, who asks him to fire her over the incident. At the hospital, Inju is taken to Sang-woo's room where she finds similar sketches of flowers. She tells him about the 2 billion won and how she felt upon finding it. Inju wonders what she should do with the money, and Sang-woo tells her that the slush funds are a part of the business. He explains that the reason why he was in the psychiatric hospital is that he ratted his father, who was the former CEO, out on the slush funds. Upon his advice, Inju decides to keep and spend the money. He advises her that if the money makes her anxious, she should turn it into things that do not make her feel worried. He hands her the ledgers to the slush funds, something that Do-il and his team were looking to find. Sung-woo tells her that he is being kind to her because of HWA Young. Just then, Choi Do-il and his men arrive to meet Sang-woo, and a worried Inju flees from the hospital room window. When Do-il and his men enter the room, he asks Sang-woo about the ledgers and asks to be allowed to search the hospital room. Meanwhile, Inju uses the ropes to flee. Do-il finds Inju's phone and spots her running away at a distance. Elsewhere, Yi Sang is being interviewed on camera while he is having dinner with his family while In Hai is with them. In Hai speaks fondly of the family and is being treated to proper meals. As Inju is sitting at the bus stop with her belongings when Do-il spots her. In his car, Do-il explains that Yi Sang is the brother-in-law of Won Sang-woo. He adds that Sang-woo gave the ledgers to Inju to have his revenge against Yi Sang without lifting a finger. Inju confronts Do-il and tells him now that he is aware of her involvement with HWA Young's ledgers and about the 2 billion won. They should strike a deal. Do-il hints that 2 billion won is a very small settlement and asks her to wait before they strike a deal. He tells her with the election approaching, the ledgers will hold more value, which will enable her to negotiate a much bigger sum in the future. Do-il asks Inju to team up with him and split the profit 50-50. Inju tells him she is afraid of him and thinks Do-il was involved in the death of Hyun Min. He reassures her by bringing up HWA Young, stating that he had been close to her and would not harm Inju. Do-il asks Inju to rent a safety deposit box in a bank and store the ledgers there. He calls Inju a game changer and asks her to go with the flow in this game they are now a part of. Inju eventually asks the money to be split 60-40 and states that she will be keeping these 2 billion won anyway. In Kyung discusses In-hai and her fight with Jong-ho. He tells her that he started video blogging his garden on social media to be inspired and reveals that it was one of her old videos as a reporter that motivated him to start his journey as a video blogger. Just then she gets a call from later Cheol-seong's Huey brother and they meet up to chat. The young man tells In Kyung about his brother's relationship with the victim and reveals a flash drive that was found on Cheol-seong's body. In Kyung and Jong-ho study the video from the footage and find that the victim was sniffing something blue, possibly an orchid, before he was found dead in his hospital room. Inju is back home where she finds In-hai, who tells the eldest sister of her plans to study in Boston. Inju is shocked to learn that she is going to accompany Hyo-rin as her guardian to Boston. Inju is pissed and tells her she will be sending In-hai to Boston on her own. In-hai tells her sister that she would rather live as a maid to Hyo-rin in Boston than live with her sisters in the house that they lived in. Elsewhere, Jong-ho is worried about leaving In Kyung alone and asks to tag along with her when she goes to investigate the murder. He hints that after his grandfather passes, he will be left alone, which is why he doesn't want to leave In Kyung in danger. In Kyung notices the flower that Jong-ho picked from Cheol-seong's accident, and In Kyung realizes it was the same flower that the victim sniffed in the video. The next day, Inju is chatting up with Yi Sang's wife about them sending In-hai abroad with their daughter, Hyo-rin. She offers the money for the trip in cash, but Yi Sang's wife claims that In-hai received a scholarship that was funding her trip. Yi Sang's wife, Sana, shows her In-hai's paintings, which all had a dark subtext to them. One of the paintings, according to In-hai, featured her dying sister, which Sana states is how In-hai feels watching her sisters struggle to give her a better life. Sana calls to have Inju investigated after she showed up in expensive heels and so much cash. In Kyung and Jong-ho start looking up about the flower while Inju takes yoga lessons when she recalls a traumatic past memory. Jong-ho finds out how the orchid could be connected to the victim's death, and he drops her back home. At the house, In Kyung finds the boxes full of money in their freezer and is shocked as she confronts Inju about its connection with Hwa Young. The sisters argue as In Kyung states keeping the money is too dangerous, while Inju states that keeping something that is already embezzled is not stealing. Inju tells In Kyung about a fourth sister of theirs who had died because they did not have money to treat her. In Kyung is shocked but shares how she is okay with being poor but not stealing. Inju tells In Kyung that she does not mind being turned in and reveals that In-hai knows about the dead sister even though she was born after her death. Inju leaves with the cash and starts spending the money on shopping for clothes. She leaves the money in the locker at the yoga class and meets their great aunt. She tells the old woman about the money and her desire to buy a 3-bedroom apartment in Seoul. Hae-suk asks for some time and Inju tells her to work as fast as she can to save herself from the guilt. Inju claims that the guilt of their third sister dying was why Hae-suk took in Kyung. Hae-suk agrees to help her out and tells Inju that she did not hate all children, but only Inju. Inju is happy as she thanks her for the help. Meanwhile, In-hai is at Park Yi Sang's house where she picks a doll from a dollhouse. Yi Sang confronts her about it and narrates how he got into San-a's rich family despite being a driver's son. He asks her if she is willing to betray someone she loves the most in the world, leaving her shocked and in tears. A few days later, Yi Sang tells In-hai that she will have to make a sacrifice to live the life she dreams of. She asks him what was his big sacrifice that brought Yi Sang into the life of the rich. In response, he reveals it to be his father's death. The next day, Inju and Hae-suk go looking for properties when the great-aunt tells her granddaughter that when she moved back to Korea with her alimony settlement, she chose not to remarry and remain wealthy, inspiring Inju. Hyo-rin visits In-hai in her small house while Hae-suk and Inju look at an apartment owned by Hae-suk herself. As Inju inspects the new house with Hae-suk, Hyo-rin is shocked by the state of the O sisters' present accommodation. Hae-suk teaches Inju a lesson about capitalism and asks her to be prepared to lose something in order to make money. She gives Inju until the next morning to come to a decision. Hyo-rin is amazed by the way In-hai lives and asks her to appreciate the love her sisters give her, but In-hai suggests that it is not something that she wants. In-hai leaves a note for her sisters that she will be staying at Hyo-rin's that night. Inju tells In Kyung that she feels welcomed in the apartment and the middle child is unhappy about her sister buying the property with stolen money. Inju states that the house makes her feel safe, but In Kyung, who is rushing to be somewhere, still does not buy it. Inju wants to live a better life by starting anew, but In Kyung disagrees, calling the 2 billion won measly. Inju reprimands her by stating how they would still have their sister had they not been poor. In Kyung states she will stop drinking to help turn their lives around, but Inju contradicts that the only way to do so is by not being poor. Inju promises to bring their family together, but In Kyung suggests they cut ties since she is a reporter who berates criminals by profession. Just like In Hai did to her, In Kyung blocks her older sister, Inju asking her to not call her back. In Kyung meets the nurse who took care of the Bobi Savings Bank victim, Kim Dal-soo. The nurse states that Park Yi-sang's words immediately calmed Dal-soo, who had been erratic all day. She mentions that the former attorney had a stone-cold stare that scared her, but he was able to help Dal-soo come back to his senses before he killed himself. In Kyung asks her about the blue orchid in his hand, and the nurse suggests that the lawyer gave it to him. In Kyung is with Jong-ho when she studies the myth behind the blue orchid when he indirectly hits on her. Meanwhile, Sae invites In Hai to a meal and tasks her with a secret mission. Jong-ho reads up about the ghost orchid and reveals how it's called the Orchid of Death. Sana takes Hyo-rin to a hidden greenhouse which has a tree of blue ghost orchids which is illegal to grow due to its poisonous nature. She plucks one flower and gives it to In Hai, who sniffs it immediately. She then takes the flower back and places it on the tree, confusing the girl. Sana asks In Hai to draw her portrait as part of the secret mission, and In Hai starts doing so in the same room. In Kyung reads up about the flower and wonders how it could act as a sedative. In Kyung reads more about the symptoms of sniffing an orchid, whereas In Hai, who has just sniffed it, starts feeling lightheaded. In Hai asks Sana why the portrait was a secret, and the latter gives an absurd response stating she only likes things that are unbeknownst to the world. She asks if In Hai was okay, but she is having some hallucinations now. In Hai is hearing things now where the voice in her head asks her to run away, while In Kyung reads up the lethal dangers of ingesting the flower in any form. In Hai becomes erratic while the voice in her head says, "If you don't run faster, you will die," as she collapses in the room. Inju rushes to the hospital where Sana tells her that Inju is tired from the tests. At the hospital, Inju discovers that In Hai is suffering from Luigi's disease, which requires immediate surgery. Inju is overwhelmed and calls her mother, who is crying on the phone. Inju tells In Kyung about In Hai's condition and mentions that their deceased sister also died due to this disease. She wants to use the 2 billion won to save In Hai, and In Kyung finally agrees to let Inju use the money. Meanwhile, Yi-sang learns that the public opinion about him is favorable and that the slush funds will take time to be found. His secretary, Ko Soo-im, tells him that he needs a sad story to make it to the number 1 spot from number 2. Just then, Sana arrives from the hospital telling him about In Hai's rare genetic medical condition, giving him an idea. Do-il tries to warn Inju about Soo-im, but she doesn't listen. While she is at the yoga center, taking some cash out of the bag, Soo-im finds Inju and takes the 2 billion won back. Inju asks to be given 100 million won at least in order to treat her sister, but Soo-im mocks her. Soo-im asks her how low Inju was able to stoop for the money, and Inju tells the former to do her best. She tells her that in order to get 100 million won, Inju will have to be hit 10 consecutive times by Soo-im, and the former agrees. Inju collapses after the 4th hit, and Soo-im starts whacking her with a stick. Just as she is about to hit Inju the 6th time, Do-il stops her. She states that Inju consented to their game, and Inju agrees despite being in pain. Soo-im asks Inju if she can continue, and the latter agrees when Sana arrives and reprimands Soo-im for putting a stop to Inju's assault. Sana takes Inju to the same restaurant as P took her and offers Inju her jacket, just like the now deceased accountant did. Sana surprisingly also wore the same rare heels, shocking Inju. She asks Sana about her closeness with HWA Young, and the two chat up about how HWA Young accepted gifts, including the heels from Sana. She invites Inju to work as her assistant and lures her in with the idea of being well paid. Inju claims that HWA Young never may have considered Sana as her friend, because someone as rich as her could never be close to someone as poor as Inju and HWA Young. She accepts Sana's job offer, but states she will never be S friend. Just as Sana is about to make another proposition for In Hai's treatment, Inju gets a call from In Kyung. In Hai has suffered another health scare that has them rush her into surgery. When In Hai is in surgery, Inju tells In Kyung that the money won't be a problem for them. In-hai suffers a traumatic episode of the same memory in surgery, but wakes up missing her mother the following day. As they call their mother, In-hai asks about In-seon, stating that she thinks she had died once in the past. In-ju reprimands her mother for traumatizing In-hai as her only child with the memory of their elder sister's death. Their mother states she cannot come to see In-hai at the hospital because she is busy, but the two daughters call her out for lying about their father's accident. In-ju blocks her mother's phone number after ending the call. Park Yi-sang, Sanae, and Hyo-rin visit In-hai at the hospital, where the meeting is being filmed for TV. In-kyung creates a scene, shocked by their presence, but In-ju asks the middle child to wait outside. In-kyung asks them to stop the chaos and let In-hai rest, but she agrees to an interview. The two sisters are upset with In-hai, praising the Park family for saving her life. In-kyung fights with In-ju about the family's involvement in In-hai's treatment, while Yi-sang watches from afar. He joins them and tells In-kyung to continue investigating him as she was. As Suim is about to make a payment for In-hai's treatment on Yi-sang's behalf, Hae-suk arrives upon In-kyung's request and pays for it instead. Yi-sang and his team are disappointed by this, and he tries to reason with her. However, Hae-suk brings him down by mentioning his father. Meanwhile, Do-il is on a call with someone in Singapore about the money, who learns that the funds are saved under a different name than Hwa Young. The sisters help nurse In-hai back to health, but she is adamant about going to Boston with Hyo-rin. In-hai argues that living abroad is a different life, and she wants to learn about it from Sanae as both her sisters are inexperienced. In-hai mentions that In-seon, their dead sister, warned her to flee away from the family before winding up dead. In-ju tells In-kyung about the ledgers with the hope of sending In-hai abroad herself, but In-kyung thinks of using them to expose Yi-sang. At Jong-ho's house, In-kyung gets on a call with the author of the novel about the blue orchid. The author states that the flower was told to possess the power of making one hear the feelings of the dead. He gives In-kyung the address where he was able to find an orchid from South Korea. The address turns out to be the same as Cheol-seong had given In-kyung before his death. In-ju meets Do-il, who tells her that for the past 3 years, Hwa Young has been living in Singapore with In-ju's identity. He also reveals that she split the 70 billion won into 7 different accounts, all under In-ju's name. In-ju recalls signing the papers for Hwa Young and is left confused. She asks Do-il for her to be sent to Singapore immediately. Following this, In-ju tells Do-il how she took a trip to Singapore with Hwa Young after her mother had passed away. She is still not able to comprehend why Hwa Young would leave behind so many riches for her, and she asks to visit the country. Do-il tells her she cannot do it now since there are people on the lookout to catch her. He suggests that she should start working with Sanae in order to build her trust, and to be able to accompany him to the Orchid Festival there. He asks In-ju to prove to Sanae that she is capable of doing the job by building her trust. As he drops In-ju off back home, In-kyung and Jong-ho notice Do-il. He recalls knowing Do-il from the university he studied at in the States. In-kyung thinks In-ju is dating Do-il and tries to embarrass her in front of him. Do-il appears to understand her plan and plays along by addressing In-ju affectionately. After he leaves, In-ju tells In-kyung that she will be joining Sanae as her employee, leaving her shocked. That night, In-ju recalls her trip to Singapore with Hwa Young and remembers how the two bonded over the trip. The next day, In-ju starts working with Sanae and builds up her trust by being adept and useful. Sanae packs her bags for a trip and asks In-ju to join her in the car. She tells In-ju that she will be leaving for an event in Singapore and asks for the matter to be hidden from Park Yi-sang and Hyo-rin. Sanae also warns In-ju about Hyo-rin's panic attacks and hands her medication to help with it in her absence. She states she will be back in a couple of days and drops In-ju at the nearby sidewalk. In-ju, In-hai and Hyo-rin are watching the documentary from when In-hai was hospitalized. In-ju is uncomfortable with the way they are portraying In-hai, but the youngest sister doesn't find anything odd and giggles with Hyo-rin. Suddenly, Yi-sang barges in and throws a tantrum, informing Hyo-rin about the Singapore trip. In fury, he breaks the television with a golf stick, causing Hyo-rin to have a panic attack. He asks Hyo-rin to call her mother back home, but In-ju intervenes, letting her calm down. Yi-sang invites In-ju for a chat and asks about Sanae's trip. He looks up photos online and finds Sanae at an event. Do-il comes into the room and Yi-sang tasks him to bring Sanae back from Singapore immediately. Hyo-rin is calmer after taking the medicines and is grateful about the two sisters staying with her. In-ju chats up with Do-il, and he informs her that they were under CCTV surveillance. He takes her away from the cameras, and he calms In-ju down, reassuring her everything will work out according to their plan. Do-il tells In-ju that she will be able to live a new life with a new identity, and says that he would protect In-ju with all his might. She calms down and tells Do-il she will try to trust him. In-ju goes back inside the house and tries to talk to In-hai about her plans for the future of the three sisters, but In-hai does not want to hear any of it. She dismisses In-ju and walks away. That night, In-ju is sleeping in Hyo-rin's room when In-hai takes her to the room with the orchid tree. The two friends discuss Hyo-rin's episodes of panic attacks, and Hyo-rin reveals she practiced self-harm to overcome her troubles. In-hai suggests that Hyo-rin should harness her inner demons to the canvas instead, just like her, and paint out her horrific memories. As part of their agreement for helping with In-hai's medical bills, In-kyung has to work with Hae-suk at her real estate firm. Hae-suk introduces the reporter and her grandniece as the director of the firm, shocking In-kyung. In-kyung is adamant about rejoining her workplace as a reporter, whereas the great-aunt hands work down to In-kyung, keeping her occupied. Soo-in finds Do-il at Yi-sang's house and asks him about his late-night rendezvous with In-ju. He lies that she is a fling to him, trying to misguide Soo-in. At the Pilseok real estate agency, In-kyung is working through the balance sheets of the law firm for the past 3 years. She learns that her great-aunt's company has dangerous liabilities, but Hae-suk states she has everything under her control. She states that In-kyung will help her company in the years to come. In-kyung asks her about her interaction with Yi-sang at the hospital. Meanwhile, Sana is pissed after she is brought back from Singapore. Sana mocks Yi-sang for being her manservant and triggers, and the couple ends up having a huge fight that sounds through their huge house, sending Hyo-rin into another panic attack episode. Sana leaves the house, and the young girl is concerned about her mother's absence. She looks at the CCTV footage and notices that Sana is leaving in her car. The scene shifts where Sana is at the hospital with her father, General Won, who is comatose. She watches Yi-sang's statement on the news with a stoic expression. That night, Hyo-rin is painting a woman with red heels in the orchid room, and In-hai praises her for her talent. The next morning, Yi-sang and Sana keep up appearances at a public event, but she is still hungover from the night before. In the women's room, In-ju notices that Sana had stained her white shirt and offers her own shirt in exchange for amusing Sana. Jong-ho and In-kyung visit the address given to them by the author of the novel. The address is a school, and they chat up with Sa-pyong, the principal there. He shows them the rare plantation of a specific kind, the blue orchid, and states that General Won had established the school years ago, mentioning that the plant was a gift from the general. Sana gives In-ju a makeover, telling her that she will have to dress tastefully to work as her assistant. In-ju and Sana discuss Yi-sang, and she tells In-ju that she purposefully tries to look ditzy to make Yi-sang look smart. In-kyung and Jong-ho are still at the Wonryong School Museum, where she films the displays that praise General Won's contribution to the Vietnam War. Sa-pyong tells them to look at the alumni from the school, and In-kyung is shocked to see her colleague, Ma Rai, as one of the students. Sana leaves the store with In-ju and notices that she is being tailed. She rushes back into the store as In-ju follows her and leaves in a taxi from the rear exit. In-ju is concerned as she asks Sana if they were being followed, and the latter states it is Yi-sang treating her like a child because she is having fun. She asks In-ju to take her to Hwa Young's house, where she asks In-ju about the incident. In-ju gets emotional and Sana sits on the floor, recalling her bond with Hwa Young. As Sana's dress rides up to her knees, In-ju notices cuts on her thigh. Sana asks In-ju if she still hates her, and is relieved to hear In-ju's understanding response. Sana shares that she always wanted to be an actress, but since she was unable to do so due to her affluent father, she gave up on her dream. She tells In-ju that now, she chooses to act around the clock with a different personality in real life. Sana recalls bonding with Hwa Young about this, and In-ju shares Yi-sang's violent episode. She asks Sana to ask for help if they were being abused. Sana promises that he would never hurt Hyo-rin. That evening, In-ju is having drinks with Do-il, and she mentions how she is sympathizing with Sana. He mocks her for trusting things at face value and asks her to stop being gullible as she trusts Sana's claims. In-ju gets a warning message about Do-il from In-kyung. In-kyung tells In-ju that back in the States, he was in a car accident. Do-il was rescued from the accident, but the body of the woman he was with was nowhere to be found. In-kyung alleges that Do-il faked the car accident to kill his girlfriend. She also adds that his mother was charged with assault. In Kyung links Do-il's connections with General Won and the Wonryong group, asking In-ju to be careful of him. In-ju is not having it and bickers with her sister over it. She tells In Kyung that Do-il only means money to her and that she will use him to get the money from the ledgers. In-ju notices the flower at Jong-ho's house and reveals how she saw one at Hwa Young's house, as well as at Hyun Min's accident spot. The next day, In Kyung is rushing to work to tell her boss about the flower, and she runs into her great-aunt, who is in a state of shock. In Kyung meets her boss, who suddenly gets a call from the news network's personnel committee. He tells In Kyung that she has been dismissed from working as a reporter. In-hae calls In-ju asking her to bring Hyo-rin's phone to their academy. As In-ju is looking for the phone, she finds Hyo-rin's morbid painting and is shocked. Hyo-rin's painting is an exact replica of the scene where In-ju found Hwa Young's body in the wardrobe. In Kyung is shocked after being dismissed from her job and rushes to her great-aunt, assuming she was the one who made this happen. Hae-suk denies any part in having her fired and appears to be unwell. At the same time, In-ju questions Hyo-rin about the paintings and the girl starts crying. In Kyung rushes to Yi Sang's press conference and uses the information from Hae-suk to ask him about his father's wealthy investments despite being General Won's driver. That night, In-hae tells In-ju that Hyo-rin was nowhere to be found, and they go through the CCTV footage to see her in one of the cars in the basement. The two sisters rush there to find Hyo-rin passed out from watching the dash cam footage from the car. In-ju is shocked to see Yi Sang entering Hwa Young's apartment complex on the night of her murder. In-ju is shocked to learn that Yi Sang was the man that drove to Hwa Young's house on the night of her death. Meanwhile, Ma Rai reprimands In Kyung for causing controversy. In Kyung asks her about Ma Rai's involvement with General Won and his school, and the reporter responds by saying that she only got a scholarship because she worked hard for it. Back at the house, Hyo-rin recalls the night of Hwa Young's death and how she came back home late after her classes. She states that her parents were fighting as usual and she saw her leave without acknowledging her. She checked the CCTV footage and learnt that he took her grandfather, General Won's car, something that he never does. Minutes later, she also saw her mother leave, which triggered her into an episode. Hyo-rin tells the 2O sisters that she was afraid her parents would never return, so she slit her wrists to seek their attention. In-ju inquires how Hyo-rin painted the scene of Hwa Young's death, and the little girl states that it was not her first time seeing that image. She states that she has been envisioning the scenario for quite some time in her nightmares, which only became clear on the night of Hwa Young's death. In-hae mentions that she too started seeing morbid visions like that of In-seon's death after visiting the secret room with the poisonous orchids. The young girls state that the scent of the orchid helps one see the future and ghosts, but In-ju is still having a hard time processing it. Hyo-rin states that just because Yi Sang was at Hwa Young's place that night, it does not mean that he killed her. She tells In-ju that she won't be handing the dash cam footage to her, and In-ju promises to ask if she needed to see or use the video. She gives Hyo-rin her medicines and leaves. Meanwhile, Yi Sang is being hounded by reporters for lying about his humble upbringing when his father was hoarding property in Korea. In Kyung is also hounded by reporters, and she is unable to chat with Hae-suk, who seems worried. She reveals the real estate confidential documents she found from Hae-suk's office to the reporters before leaving. Later that night, In-ju is looking for the dash cam footage in Hyo-rin's room, but is unable to find it before In-hae catches her. The sisters bicker and In-hae is siding with the Park family, triggering In-ju. The public sentiment against Yi Sang is sour and Soo-im is worried. She tells In-ju to find that she was at Hwa Young's house. Inside the house, In-ju waits to see who it was Soo-im who was following her. Hyo-rin and In-hae dig up a hole in the orchid room and hide the dash cam footage there. In-hae consoles Hyo-rin and tells her to trust herself. The next day, In-ju visits Yi Sang with a request from Hae-suk. She states that the great-aunt wanted to meet him and gives him a photo she sent to convince him. Yi Sang agrees and Hae-suk arrives at the house for a chat. They talk about their past connections and how Yi Sang had already started destroying her business due to In Kyung's harsh behavior towards him. She extends an olive branch, asking him to forget In Kyung's behavior. Yi Sang wonders how she is still alive despite her connections with the Won family. Hae-suk states that she was the one who saved General Won's life and that she was still alive because he wanted it. She narrates a rather embarrassing story about his father's death and Yi Sang seems upset. Sana watches Hae-suk leave the house and appears restless. Do-il warns In-ju that the Park family will be trying to get rid of her if she does not calm down about Yi-sang's involvement in Hwa Young's murder. In-ju asks Do-il to sympathize with her and states that she was at Hwa Young's house to check who was following her after all. She was sure that Soo-im was the one who cleared the dash cam footage for all the cars in the lane to protect Yi-sang. In-ju confronts him about In Kyung's allegations. Do-il states that the woman who disappeared was his first client that he helped live an anonymous life. That evening, Yi-sang holds a press conference and blames General Won for the properties owned under his father's name. Sana and Yi-sang apologize for the wrongdoings of their parents and claim that they were providing scholarships to hundreds of deserving candidates in order to repent for the wrongdoings of their fathers. This has all the reporters clapping for Yi-sang, and In Kyung is left shocked. Ma Rai asks if Yi-sang helped In Kyung's sister In Hai with the scholarship, but the politician cunningly declines to comment. In-ju is at dinner with Do-il, and she reprimands him for keeping her in the dark when he knew about Yi-sang's next move. Do-il asks her to keep calm and focus on the money, which is their end goal, as he tells her to comply with the parks. Hae-suk calls her asking to go help In Kyung, who is by herself at the press conference. In Hai avoids In Kyung and leaves with the Park family. She is mobbed by the reporter, and In-ju helps her flee, and they arrive at Hae-suk's house. The great aunt asks them to let go of the incident and move on, but In Kyung is sure something is fishy. She asks the great aunt about what she found in the documents at her real estate firm, and Hae-suk tells her that not knowing the best for her safety. In Kyung reads out an article from years ago and wonders if Hae-suk was involved in illegal activities along with General Won and Park Yi-sang's father. Hae-suk asks In Kyung to stop prodding and focus on the future of the company. The two sisters have a fight outside, but In Kyung is upset with In-ju asking her to calm down. The next day, Yi-sang, Sene, Do-il and Soo-im discuss how In Kyung's allegations have been helping them, and now the public were in their favor. Yi-sang asks Do-il to go to Singapore to get the funds for the campaign. They discuss that it was now time for her to be eliminated. Soo-im suggests that In-ju should be killed as she is a threat, but Do-il mentions how Soo-im had scared her off over her visit to Hwa Young's house. Sana declares that In-ju is someone she can trust and asks Soo-im to leave the eldest of the three sisters alone. In Kyung notes down the address of the properties Yi-sang revealed in the press conference, and one of the addresses is the Wonryong school she visited with Jong-ho. She tries to look for documents in Hae-suk's firm, but the great aunt has had them shredded to stop In Kyung's investigation. She finds one last photograph, but Hae-suk's assistant shreds that too. Soo-im confronts Do-il about his involvement with In-ju, and he warns her, asking for her to stay out of it and leave In-ju alone. Sana is at the hospital with General Won where In-ju meets her. She asks In-ju to go to Singapore for the orchid auction. In-ju wonders why Sana trusts her after Hwa Young's betrayal, and Sana states that Hwa Young had nothing to lose after her mother's death, but In-ju still has her sisters. She gives In-ju the blue ghost orchid as a present and asks her to keep it by her bed when she sleeps. She tells In-ju that smelling the orchid when it is in bloom will help her see what she really wants. Sana offers to pay In-ju handsomely if she went to Singapore on her behalf, and she tells how the orchid can go back to the father tree once In-ju sniffs it. She claims that only then In-ju will be able to be a part of the International Orchid Society or Jeongrin Society. In-ju appears to be in a trance-like state after the mention of that name. Meanwhile, In Kyung tapes the shredded photograph back together. She reads Jeongrin Society, written behind the photograph of a dozen people from the 70s. In the orchid room, In Hai is attempting to psychoanalyze Hyo-rin's nightmare and asks where she saw the woman in the red shoes, but Hyo-rin isn't able to concentrate. Just then, Do-il is shocked to see In-ju with an orchid and asks her to meet him. She declines, stating she is tired, but he continues to follow her to Hae-suk's house. He asks her to refrain from sniffing the orchid, but she does not agree. Do-il mentions that things will be dangerous for her once she sniffs it, but In-ju asks him to back off. At night, when the blue ghost orchid is in bloom, In-ju sniffs the flower and is in a trance when she suddenly gets up and walks around Hae-suk's house. In Kyung is still at the real estate firm as she goes through the names of the former owners of the Wonryong school. The list of owners includes Kim Dal-soo, the victim of the Bobi Savings Bank scandal. She calls Jong-ho over to the firm. In-ju visits Hae-suk in her home office and asks intrusive questions, confusing the great aunt. In Kyung and Jong-ho analyze the list of owners of the Wonryong school land, which includes General Won, Park Yi-sang's father, Sa Pyong, the school principal, Kim Dal-soo, as well as Oh Hae-suk. At Hae-suk's house, In-ju discusses the 70 billion won ledgers and explains how she will have to take risks to be rich. Hae-suk is against the idea of messing with Park Yi-sang. She tells Hae-suk how she is aware that Yi-sang killed Hwa Young and asks the great aunt for information to bring Yi-sang down once and for all. Jong-ho and In Kyung learn that members of the Jeongrin Society have all died early on in their lives, with 4 members still alive, including General Won, Sa Pyong, and Hae-suk. In-ju tells Hae-suk that the ledgers and the information about Yi-sang will help them destroy him completely, but Hae-suk does not agree with her. In Kyung and Jong-ho conclude that Jeongrin Society has something to do with the orchids. At the same time, In-ju mentions the blue orchids she found at the scene of many deaths in the past, including Hwa Young, Hyun-min, and more. She alleges that all the deaths are connected to the orchids and asks Hae-suk about them. She suddenly starts yawning and is unable to speak while Hae-suk grows uncomfortable. Hae-suk dismisses In-ju, but she compares herself with Hae-suk, stating how they were both very similar. Do-il waits outside Hae-suk's house but does not see In-ju leave. In-ju is in bed when she dreams about how Yi-sang may have killed Hwa Young. She wakes up with a jolt and looks at the orchid. Just then, Hyo-rin is able to concentrate on her nightmares, and she mentions climbing up stairs that lead to the sky. In-ju climbs the stairs in Hae-suk's house and walks around in a state of trance. Hyo-rin and In-hae go to the secret terrace from Hyo-rin's nightmares when Sana stops them. Sometime after, In-kyung arrives at Hae-suk's house and is shocked to see the door open. Inside, she finds In-ju laying beside Hae-suk's dead body with blood all over her hands. On the floor is an orchid,